If you want to cheat and steal glory and get a lot of attention, the Battle Tower is kind of perfect, and cheaters particularly seem to like the Gen 4 tower. And the reason for this is simple. It's really fast and easy to cheat the first 99.9% of a streak, then film a set of 7 battles, put it on YouTube and get big views. You can easily do this on emulator as well as on a real card. In fact, every single cheater I'm going to go over in the video has probably done that, and these videos have amassed over 500,000 combined views. I think cheaters also feel safe in the knowledge that the lack of evidence is in their favour, and most viewers don't really pay attention or know enough to call it out. It seems obvious that the cheaters in this video are ignorant of exactly why their runs are so suspicious. So in this video, we're going to do exactly that and pay attention. I'm going to show you each case and see if you can spot the mistakes made. Experienced Nuzlockers and Frontier players should spot most of them on the first time through, but for some later ones I'm not expecting anyone else to spot them. But before I start, I want to say one thing. Cheating in single player is fine. I don't care and no one else should either. The problem is specifically cheating in a competitive environment or trying to pass off your cheating as legitimate gameplay. It's also a problem because new players search for teams to use, and if they come across any of the ones in this video, they're going to be extremely disappointed and confused in how the teams don't work for them. So let's start off with quite a new video. This one's actually very funny. Meet Marioipod, the world's greatest Pokemon player. Mario blesses us with a video on match 700 of the Battle Tower. For those of you who don't know, this is easily a top 10 world streak, and even playing as fast as possible, it would take almost 60 hours of non-stop gameplay to get this far. That's impressive. Mario shares one game and also some overworld footage in his video. The game is fairly straightforward. I'll do a neutral outline first and see what you can notice. Medicham comes out, Mario goes to Metagross and uses Meteor Mash. Next in is Raichu, and Metagross uses Earthquake. Finally out comes Executor, which is finished off by Mario's Tyranitar. Then Mario comes out and in the lobby he gets this dialogue. Then he gets this dialogue as well. Something to remember throughout the video is that these cheaters are willingly choosing to share this gameplay with us. They could easily have ended the video earlier, or not included anything they thought was suspicious, or shared footage of a different match. So how do we know Mario is a cheater? Let's get the obvious one out of the way first. Mario gets an award for a 50 and 100 win streak, as he apparently leaves the 700 win streak set. Even if you've never played the game, you can probably guess that the 50 win trophy is awarded immediately after 50 wins, not after 700 wins. And you only activate this event once per save file, and the same is true for the 100 win trophy. It's impossible to have this happen in an unedited save. We know for a fact that Mario must have cheated his way to 693 and then just filmed the ending. But there's actually more hints too. Mario's gameplay is very strange when you think about it. An odd choice is to run Rock Polish on Metagross instead of Agility. Rock Polish, of course, is a single-use TM, whereas Agility is a regular level-up move. But people are allowed to have strange movesets. It doesn't mean they've cheated. Not using Rock Polish against Medicham is just a mistake though. There's no reason not to use it when Metagross is slower. Perhaps if Medicham 3 had a way to paralyze Metagross, you could say it was justified, but this was just a mistake. And it's a mistake that could have been punished if Raichu got slightly luckier against Metagross. You might think that maybe he thought his Metagross was already faster than Medicham 3. That would be a stunning thing to not know after 700 battles with this team. But even if that's true, he should probably use Rock Polish before the next Pokemon comes in anyway, and while Metagross is taking less damage. This might sound like nitpicking, but you cannot get a 700 win streak while playing so suboptimally. You are guaranteed to get some bad luck at points in the tower, and if bad luck strikes while you're also playing badly, you're going to lose. Now, the issues with Mario's videos don't actually stop there. This is him in the Battle Castle Gold Print fight. Tyranitar uses one Dragon Dance before rock sliding Entei, even though Tyranitar is still slower. Of course, the correct move is to use Dragon Dance twice and then use Crunch, which avoids risking the 10% miss and guarantees the win. I guess Mario is such a good player that he never misses a move on his massive win streaks. Mario also wastes castle points by scouting the Gold Print fight, when you can just look up the Pokemon for the Gold Print fight online. Mario has also played the factory. Let's have a look at that. So Slowking 4 is the lead and he switches to Snorlax. He uses Crunch. We keep Snorlax in and we use Crunch again. Snorlax faints to the Life Orb recoil, and we go to Latios. In comes Roserade 4. Latios uses Dragon Claw twice, while Roserade uses Shadow Ball. Finally out comes Quagsire 4. Mario switches to Regirock on the Ice Punch. Then Regirock and Quagsire trade Earthquakes, with Regirock finally coming out on top. There's also a lot wrong with this game. I think switching to Snorlax against Slowking is actually fine, and I also support the use of Crunch even though Double Edge does do more damage. This is because after using Crunch, we can switch to Latios on turn 4, saving Snorlax and letting Latios get the clean, safe kill on Slowking. Instead of this, Mario just lets Snorlax die for no reason. Roserade coming out is also a great opportunity. Latios can use Dragon Dance once and easily OHKO it with Dragon Claw. That avoids us having to make contact with a potential Poison Point Pokemon twice, most likely saving the Lumberry. While it is true that doing this might risk a crit slightly more, in both scenarios if we get crit and Roserade hits a Leaf Storm into Regirock, it's going to be over anyway. By far the worst mistake is actually against Quagsire though. In a 2v1 situation like this, you just want to do damage. What you definitely don't want to do is to give Quagsire a free opportunity to try and freeze Regirock. Again, if Ice Punch either freezes or crits here, we're actually going to lose. The best play is actually the obvious play. We just need to attack with Latios until Latios faints, and then we just need to use Earthquake. There's no reason to risk anything else here. Again, I am impressed that Mario can get so much wrong in such a short game. Now, you might think I'm being overly critical. Mario might just say I'm jealous, because he recently then destroyed my Battle Factory world record with his new win streak of 343 wins, only one day after getting the gold print. It also seems like he beat my world record in the Battle Castle, even though he got a shorter win streak than me. Incredible, I think only Mario can do such things. I want to congratulate Mario on his amazing new world records. Mario's video is quite new, so let's visit a really old video next. Our next champion is Casador Shiny, and they're playing the Diamond and Pearl Tower. It's almost the same as the Frontier Tower, and most of the logic still applies. Now, I remember watching this video as a kid and being really impressed. It seems I wasn't alone. A lot of the comments are praising this genius video too. His team? Tauros, Frostlass and Shedinja. Let's see the first game he shared. Again, at first I'll just say what happens. It's a collector, which means a set 1 Pokemon. Dusknoir 1 is a Cursed Stool set. Tauros hits Dusknoir with Stone Edge, doing just over half damage, and then Curse kills Dusknoir. The Tauros damage is only possible with a Choice Band, so this must be a Choice Band Tauros. Next in is Kingdra. Kingdra 1 can't touch Shedinja apart from Yawn. Casador switches to Shedinja, Yawn comes in, and Casador stays in and kills Kingdra as Shedinja falls asleep from Yawn. The final Pokemon is Magnezone 1. It can't touch Shedinja directly, but it can hit it indirectly with Swagger. Casador's Shedinja has a Focus Sash, not a Lumberry. Casador then later switches to Tauros and Earthquakes Magnezone. I then want to skip ahead to this game versus a Waitress. Because it's a Waitress, this must be a set 2 Metagross, which is very similar to Metagross 2 from the Frontier. Tauros Earthquakes, gets hit by Psychic, and then Earthquakes again. Ninetales 2 is in next. It's absolutely max physical bulk, and so it can survive a Choice Band Earthquake. Then Shedinja finishes it off with Shadow Sneak. Last in is Vaporeon 2, which Shedinja also beats. Casador then leaves the battle room, shows his party, shows his win streak of 394, zooms in on the 394 number, and then ends the video. Once again, let's start with the most obvious point here. In the tower, you have to do battles in sets of 7. That means unless you lose and end the streak, your streak at the desk must be a multiple of 7. 394 is not a multiple of 7. The save must have been modified, and modified by someone who either doesn't know how the tower works, or doesn't know how to divide by 7, or both. The high 300s isn't a random score either, this would have been the world record at the time. But even without this basic error, there are a lot of problems here. First up, the team. Frostlass and Tauros are fine. In terms of a pretend Gen 4 Frontier tier list, these are both easily in the top 20 or 30 choices. A team of them probably would be able to get 400 with a good third teammate. Shedinja is not that good third teammate though. Nothing screams, I haven't actually played the tower, like using a Shedinja does. Way too many Pokemon carry coverage for it, or carry moves like Swagger. When the Shedinja gimmick works, it's going to be a free win, but when it doesn't work, you're essentially playing a 2v3, and tower teams do not want that kind of variance when you're on the side that must never lose. Shedinja is maybe most famous because of the bizarre internet myth surrounding a Wonder Guard Spiritomb against Firefang opponents. This is something I've actually debunked and found the original history for in a short. Despite this, I still get a lot of comments about it. I think it's some kind of Mandela effect. But whatever, let's pretend 400 is maybe possible even though Shedinja sucks. It would have to be an exceptional player in that case. And as you can guess, the gameplay decisions are also really bad here. First up, Tauros should not use Stone Edge on Dusknoir, it should use Earthquake. All Stone Edge does is risk a mischance, and Stone Edge is also the lower PP move to be using against a Pokemon with pressure, and the crit won't matter against Dusknoir 1. A fun fact about this interaction is that it's very likely to be a Diamond and Pearl Tower bug. Pokemon in the Diamond and Pearl Tower have random natures, and there's a 16% chance that this Dusknoir had a defense lowering nature that wasn't docile, which explains how Stone Edge dealt this much damage. Why do I mention docile? Because the docile nature both decreases defense and also boosts defense. Each neutral nature does this, That's why there are 5 neutral natures for the 5 stats. Gen 3 contest and Pokeblock nerds already know about this, but it's fun trivia. Anyway, things got even worse against Kingdra. Casador did at least switch, but when Shedinja stayed in after Yawn, it was a mistake. The AI will never attack a Wonder Guard Pokemon here, and Kingdra was guaranteed to be stuck on Yawn endlessly. Casador should have gone for a Will-O-Wisp, then while waiting to wake up, use Shadow Sneak to avoid the second Yawn. There's no reason to KO Kingdra while accepting a sleep on the next turn. Anyone who has ever actually tried to use Shedinja will know 2 very important interactions for it. And the first of these is that if the AI is not switching out, it's a sign that they have nothing in the back with a super effective move against Shedinja. Kingdra staying in heavily suggested this, and so letting Shedinja fall asleep might have been the only way to actually lose the game and could get lucky enough versus Tauros and Frostlass. The worst mistake is actually against Metagross. Metagross 2 does have Shadow Ball. It seems like you shouldn't use Shedinja, but actually you should. You can switch between Tauros and Shedinja 15 times in this situation. Metagross will never use Shadow Ball while Tauros is in, and it will always use Shadow Ball against Shedinja. That means Tauros is always switching into a Shadow Ball, and Shedinja is always switching into a move that is not Shadow Ball. These 15 turns of switching will guarantee that neither of your Pokemon take any damage, while also guaranteeing that Shadow Ball loses all 15 PP. When it's over, Shedinja can safely kill Metagross while taking no damage. That's a lot safer than letting Tauros get hit by Psychic. If you want a massive win streak, you will inevitably have to find ways to win even in unlucky games. What if Psychic crits Tauros here? We know that Ninetales and Vaporeon were in the back. It's not a good look. In fact, let's talk about that. Tauros just fainted to Ninetales, and now it's a 2v2 with Frostlass and Shedinja against a weak Ninetales and a mystery third Pokemon. What is better to send out, Frostlass or Shedinja? The answer is actually Frostlass. Frostlass can easily kill Ninetales and then use Destiny Bond to close out the game. This guarantees the win, even if the final Pokemon is something that could easily beat Frostlass and Shedinja. Going to Shedinja first is stupid. It closes out the option of using Destiny Bond, because Frostlass won't be able to use this if it's the last Pokemon alive, and Frostlass might not be able to switch into the final Pokemon. It's obvious that Casador has no idea how to play this team, even on a basic level. It's almost impressive how obviously fake this is. We're moving on to jqsie. And we're also moving past the cheaters who put less than 5 minutes into faking their tower records, and onto what I'm going to call the LARPing cheaters. These are cheaters who are too stupid to understand how fake their run looks, but have at least put in enough effort that there's no massive red flags like earlier. If you know anything about the real records in the Battle Tower, you'll know that the most dominant strategy is known as Trick Scarf. Like most genius ideas, it's simple but effective. You trick a Choice Scarf onto the enemy Pokemon. If you do this before they act on turn 1, which you usually can with the Choice Scarf boost, they are locked into their turn 1 move select until they switch out. And this is another quirk of the AI. The AI will not switch out until you attack it, or until certain special conditions like Perish Song are met. That means that usually after doing Trick, you have a lot of time, and you can use this time to set up something like a Swords Dance Garchomp. That's the part of Trick Scarf you may know, but I have over 10,000 games in the tower, and I will tell you that the details of Trick Scarf are very deep, and while the strategy is certainly very strong, it's also a complete disaster if you make a tiny mistake. This isn't something you can shortcut knowledge on. Of course, over the years, there have been a lot of idiots who think they are smart and think they understand how Trick Scarf works in the tower even if they've never played it. Or they might call it very boring or very easy to play. These same idiots often also know that the real records with Trick Scarf are very large, and assume that because the records are very large, they are safe to pretend they have a streak just below the record. It seems like this is lesson 101 in the cheating playbook, because it happens so often. A cheater cheating to just below the record. That's jqsie. This is their 2000 win streak in the Gen 4 tower. It's definitely fake, and I don't expect new players to understand all the issues, so I'm going to list them directly. The biggest reason this is fake is actually the lead Cresselia. First, Cresselia can't lead a 2000 win streak team. It just can't. The lack of charm will kill the streak before then. 2000 games is so many that you're absolutely going to face every single problematic, deadly common lead threat. And I know for a fact that luck doesn't go that far. Cresselia is bulky and it learns Trick, but there's a lot more to Trick Scarf as a strategy than just that. Even if Cresselia was viable, this moveset is nonsense. The most important second move is Thunder Wave. That seems pretty obvious. You want to slow down the enemy just after tricking a Choice Scarf onto them, and you also want to get the 25% to get an extra free turn on each paralysis proc. Cresselia without T-Wave is actually laughable. Cresselia's EVs are also wrong, but I won't go into that. In fact, this is another reason I know the streak is fake. Drapion is another well-known choice for the Battle Tower due to acupressure setup. The thing is, as anyone who has ever used Drapion will tell you, you need to go nearly max special bulk on Drapion. There are several reasons for this, but the biggest one is that because of the Earthquake as a primary weakness, Drapion must act as a response to special attackers, while its teammate will have to act as a response to physical attackers. Special attackers can't be easily crippled like physical attackers can via charm. Now, jqsie has Captivate to drop special attack on Cresselia, however, more than half the time this won't work, since the enemy has to be gendered and has to be male, and jqsie doesn't have charm at all. And jqsie seems to believe that Cresselia can learn charm, but it can't. This is a common pattern in cheaters. Cheaters want to copy teams, but they always feel compelled to change something, without any understanding of why the team existed as it did in the first place. The battle tower isn't some random set of battles with random teams. The most optimised teams here run along a knife edge. Randomly moving around most of Drapion's EVs is a sign of not only stupidity, but a fundamental ignorance of how tower opponents work and how the team functions. In other words, I would bet a lot of money that jqsie has fewer than 50 games total played. The full reasoning for why this team is fake is something I could rant about for hours, but I'll stop here. What is sad about this is that jqsie's video is actually full of semi-correct information. If they weren't a lying cheater, then maybe they could have spent more time to do a real streak. They do the classic lie brag though, saying they compiled their own spreadsheet of trainers, and without acknowledging that Smogon had already done this. And I'm sure they know about the existence of Smogon in particular, because their team is a Frankenstein copy of a load of teams from the Smogon leaderboard. But things suddenly get worse, and this is another own goal by a cheater. jqsie highlights a fight against Picnicker Tonya. jqsie says Tonya doesn't appear past battle 50 and that this must be a glitch. The problem is, that's just wrong. There are 100 trainers that appear past 50, and 20 of those trainers have 21 IV set for Pokemon, while the other 80 are 31 IV trainers. The 21 IV trainers are technically tier 7 trainers and not tier 8 trainers, but they still appear past 50 in every facility. As someone who's apparently compiled a spreadsheet should know. jqsie is right about just one thing here, which is that you are meant to pay attention to the exact enemy trainer in the tower. Let's think about the odds for this for a second. If jqsie never met any tier 7 trainer past match 50 in their 950 win streak, the chance of this is about 1 in a Google multiplied by a Google. I don't use the word impossible often, but this is actually impossible. jqsie is lying, and it's obvious that their true game count is not just lower than 50, but probably lower than 20. jqsie pontificates about the 256 rebirth, but they're wrong about this too. Anyway, in the video we highlight a game against Yanmega. Luckily this Yanmega is male and we can use Captivate against it. We can only imagine what kind of strategy is meant to be used if it is a female Yanmega, particularly if it's a female tinted lens Yanmega. While Garchomp can kill it, we're not getting a proper setup here. This statement from jqsie is also incredibly wrong. The more threatening out of physical attackers and special attackers in the tower isn't close, because it's the physical attackers. Nearly 2/3 of the tower is physical, and all of the most powerful spam attacks you get hit by are physical too. We'll see that again later in the video. I also have to wonder, if special attackers are apparently such a big threat, why Drapion has no special defense investment. The team that jqsie is copying from here had a max special defense Drapion. jqsie chose to remove these EVs while copying it. jqsie then also lists that the Scarf Yanmega is 172 speed. I can only assume they have no idea that Yanmega 4 has max speed EVs. Again, I can only wonder at how it's possible to do 2000 wins in a row with this level of ignorance on how enemy sets actually work. Beyond that, the video starts out with a Feraligatr free freezing Cresselia. This actually happens quite a lot, and I have to wonder what happened next in this game. You can't set up Garchomp against an Ice Beam, and this Drapion is so weak that it's going to get free shot by Ice Beam most likely. I also refuse to believe that this is the unluckiest game out of 2000 as jqsie implies. It's not exactly correct to state things this way, but one way to interpret a 2000 win streak is to understand that even in games more unlucky than the worst 0.1% luck, that the team was still able to win. And of course this luck isn't just talking about crits, but also talking about matchups. The saddest part about this though are the comments. I do not blame people for getting duped like this, but it's sad because the Frontier does deserve more attention, but not like this. What jqsie has done here is actually sat down and laid a massive turd on the tower. The tower is a lot deeper, more complicated, and more interesting than this video implies, and jqsie is the opposite of an expert. But some cheaters don't try to copy, although it does seem like 2k is a number that cheaters like to skip to. Again, I don't think that's a coincidence. The longest accepted streak is around 2.5k. This lets 2k be a safe zone for cheaters. It's a large enough streak to impress randoms and get internet clout, but not large enough to draw a lot of attention from people who actually know how to play the game. This fake streak is quite informative though. It's from the YouTuber shiiho. I'll show you one match, but because this team is quite a lot more complicated, I'm going to add analysis as we go through. The enemy trainer is a breeder who leads Luxray. That means it must be a 21 IV Luxray 4, and since there was no Intimidate text, it must be Rivalry. Now this team is Celements, Skarmory and Blissey. The aim is to stall out enemies and then set up with Dragon Dance and sweep with Celements. Celements has Earthquake and Outrage as attacks. Now the best move against Luxray on turn 1 is actually to immediately use Substitute. Luxray does have Ice Fang, but Ice Fang will not OHKO Celements even after a Substitute. And Luxray is a lot more likely to waste time on Thunder Wave. On top of this, we cannot safely stall out this Luxray of moves. Even if we are unlucky and Luxray does not use Thunder Wave, we can still revert to the backup stall plan. Instead, Shiiho immediately goes to Blissey and Blissey gets paralysed. I will state that by the standard of previous cheaters, this isn't a massive mistake, although it is still a shocking inaccuracy from a 2000 win streak player. This Blissey does not have a bold nature, and so this is a slightly scary situation now. While a -1 Thunderfang doesn't do heavy damage, it could flinch and or crit Blissey. Blissey does not have leftovers because Celements is holding leftovers, and a crit Thunderfang will do just over half damage to Blissey. It's not that likely that Blissey would die here, but there is a very real risk. The last thing a 2000 win streak team wants to do is take on small risks constantly. Shiiho stays in and gets off his own Thunder Wave, but Blissey still doesn't want to risk a long stall battle against Luxray in this state. Shiiho instead switches to Skarmory to activate Natural Cure and cure Paralysis on Blissey. As you can tell from the damage, Skarmory would absolutely have fainted from a crit Thunderfang on this turn. Shiiho does avoid this, and then Skarmory goes on to stall Luxray for a very long time. Despite the initial danger of Luxray doing major damage to the team being over, Shiiho should still be paying attention. Luxray has exactly 65 PP in total and will spend more turns fully paralysed. Once Luxray is out of PP, it will faint to its own struggle recall in 5 more turns. It is essential that we get in as many Dragon Dances with Celements as possible. That means switching Celements in on the first struggle and then using 3 Dragon Dance before an extra substitute on the final turn Luxray is alive. With some paralysis luck, we might even get an extra Dragon Dance in. Shiiho doesn't do this, he only switches Celements in after Luxray has used struggle once, wasting a precious setup turn. Again, this might sound nitpicky, but the difference between using 2 Dragon Dance and 3 Dragon Dance is very relevant, and if Celements does fail the sweep, because Skarmory is almost out of PP, we won't be able to successfully stall another physical attacker. Celements is also forced to risk struggle critting substitute on the final turn, although there's nothing we can do to avoid this. Celements just isn't that bulky. Ironically, Steelix 4 comes out next. Steelix 4 is exactly a kind of Pokemon that survives a +2 Earthquake, but not a +3 Earthquake, and this is incredibly dangerous. Steelix has a Quick Claw, and if it activates on this turn, Celements is going to die. Skarmory and Blissey are then incredibly exposed to the final Pokemon. Shiiho is straight up 16% to lose here to Quick Claw Stone Edge if he stays in. What he should actually do is switch to Skarmory and bait out an explosion. Steelix is guaranteed to explode once it's out of Stone Edge PP. Instead, Shiiho stays in. I don't know if he was oblivious to the danger of Quick Claw or not here. Now remember, Shiiho chose to share this game. He could have chosen to share other games that make the team look safer or the team look better, but he didn't. I don't need to tell you that this game alone should cause some very serious suspicion. 16% isn't even the true loss chance, as like we said, things could have gone much worse with Luxray earlier on. I will also say that this is a fairly simple match by the standards of how advanced a team like this is. It concerns me how many errors Shiiho made in this match. But worst of all, a 21 IV Luxray 4 isn't exactly the deadliest thing in the tower. In fact, Luxray 4 is kind of terrible. Far deadlier opponents are things like Rapidash 3, Raikou 4, and even Raichu 4. All of these Pokemon are at worst going to have multiple chances to crit and instantly win the game. They're also all going to deny Celements a proper setup. Raikou 4 actually has a Shucker Berry, so you can't even Dragon Dance an Earthquake on it. You'll have to use Dragon Dance and then lock into Outrage when Celements is only at +1 and it just got smashed with a Thunderbolt. And even that list is ignoring true nightmares that exist in the tower, which are things like Explosion and Peristrong leads. The idea of stalling in the tower comes up quite a lot. The short answer is that it's kind of viable, but the stall teams that work don't look anything like this stall team. These Skarmory Blissey ideas just don't work, and they've been tried a lot. Shiiho is not a genius for finding a new idea, he's just an idiot. An ancient insult in competitive Pokemon was calling people out for doing Theorymon. The word Theorymon is not actually used in a derogatory way anymore, but I am going to label this team a Theorymon team. Skarmory and Blissey probably look like they work for people too dependent on damage calculators, but anyone who has tried these teams in the actual game will tell you just how risky they are, and how over hundreds or even thousands of games, it's almost guaranteed that really bad luck is going to strike you. Shiiho himself has an unfortunate history of cheating in a lot of other facilities also, which I won't go into today. I think the Japanese audience is too polite to call him out for it, but I find it incredibly obvious and I hope that no legitimate Japanese players were baited into trying out his team. Speaking of Japanese players overachieving with barely recorded runs, here's Eri. You might recognise the classic Dragon Water Steel core that's been recommended for almost 2 decades at this point. Here's the thing, this 609 is not a real streak. It's less a comment about the team and more comments about the player. To go past 500 requires a real strategy or an exceptional mix of strong play and good luck. And as always, we should remember that these videos are the games that the cheaters chose to show us. They could have shown us something else. They chose to show us these videos instead as examples of them playing well with the team. These videos are supposed to convince us that it's real. So match 609 starts off against Raikou. Eri switches the Garchomp, which does make sense. Raichu uses Thunderfang here. That's set 2. So it's about to use Return against Garchomp. At this point, there are 2 smart ideas. The first is to switch a Scizor and set up a Swords Dance. The second is to stay in and set up Swords Dance with Garchomp. Garchomp setting up is a slightly better idea because Eri's Scizor does not have Roost or Leftovers. Garchomp has a Focus Sash, and while it's tempting to keep the Sash intact, trading it and a chunk of HP for setup would be worth it. The setup does risk 1 extra King's Rock attempt from Raikou, but Raikou would need a double flinch or a crit flinch to capitalise on this, and even then, we still have the backup of a Scizor setup with Swords Dance. Eri instead just uses Earthquake. I will call Earthquake a stupid move by the standards of a top tier tower player, which is what Eri is pretending to be here. Regigigas comes in now. It's very likely that this is Regigigas 4 due to how Gen 4 Switch AI works. Because no Regigigas has a super effective move against Garchomp, this also guarantees that the final Pokemon does not have an Ice or a Dragon move. For this reason, I would switch to Scizor immediately. The list of legendaries Jolly Garchomp loses to that can't hit Garchomp for super effective damage is tiny. The list of legendaries that Garchomp and Spec Starmie together lose to is even smaller. And it's not as if superpowered Scizor is bad against Regigigas anyway. Instead, we stay in and use Swords Dance. Regigigas reveals Earthquake, which is indeed set 4. Now because it's set 4, we can use Swords Dance again, because we aren't going to kill at +2. However, despite this, I still like attacking. It gives us more chance to hit through Bright Powder, and we likely only need to connect once with Garchomp to put ourselves in a winning position. Eri attacks, but Garchomp misses. On the next turn, Eri goes for Outrage. Outrage is just a mistake here. It doesn't achieve anything that Earthquake doesn't already achieve, except to needlessly lock Garchomp into Outrage and potentially confuse Garchomp if it's a 2-turn Outrage. Even if it's a 3-turn Outrage, Eri could lose to something dumb like a Last Mon Registeel 2, because using Outrage would of course block Earthquake from being chosen. Instead, Regigigas goes down in 2 turns, and Garchomp does get a short Outrage confusion. So Garchomp is now confused. Again, this was an entirely avoidable mistake. The final Pokemon is Moltres. This is good news, because we can switch out to remove confusion. Scizor won't be essential anyway, and every single Moltres set will attack here, so there is no potential punish from switching here that the AI could do. Instead, we stay in, and Garchomp feints to confuse damage. Moltres uses Ancient Power. So this is really bad, because suddenly it's very possible to lose. Moltres 1 has a Pashu Berry, and can crit an Air Slash against Starmie, and Moltres 4 can get an Ominous Wind Omni Boost against Starmie. We don't know if it's Moltres 1 or Moltres 4 yet. Starmie can't use Surf here because we can't risk it being Moltres 1 and getting the crit. So Starmie is going to have to Thunderbolt. But Timid Spec's Thunderbolt isn't guaranteed to kill either Moltres set, and if Moltres 4 gets a double Omni Boost against Starmie, then Scizor's Bullet Punch is not guaranteed to kill Moltres, and Moltres can then win. Again, the odds of that are low, but low odds are going to occur in a 600 win streak. We should be prepared for it. However, there is still a 100% win here, even after the mistakes made with Garchomp. We can go to Scizor first and use Bullet Punch. Both Moltres 1 and Moltres 4 are guaranteed to go for the fire move kill on Scizor, meaning there can be no Omni Boost before Starmie comes in. This guarantees that Moltres takes about 10% chip from Bullet Punch and is also slower than Starmie. Then Starmie can come in and win with Thunderbolt. Does Eri do this? No. Instead, we just go straight to Starmie. Eri doesn't take up the 100% win here and risks going for Thunderbolt first. However, this isn't that surprising because they obviously don't have 600 matches of experience in this team, they probably have about 10. Now something I want to be clear about is that playing badly doesn't mean someone is a cheater. However, if you want to claim a massive win streak and claim to be good at Pokemon and the Battle Tower, you're going to be judged based on the most optimal choices available and based on what other good players should do. In this case, a win of over 600 with no healing moves and regular sets is extraordinary. A lot of people have attempted to do this, a lot of them are a lot better than Eri, and none of them even came close to 600. I want to be clear that I reserve this kind of in-depth breakdown only for people who invite it. I don't like doing this for legitimate players and particularly for newer players, unless they really want me to. And again, just because I find a few mistakes, it doesn't mean the streak is fake. But a lot of mistakes in these videos are fundamental play errors in how a team is meant to be used, and not something we'd ever see from successful players after hundreds of battles of practice. Again, I have 0 games played with most of the teams in this video. I shouldn't be finding issues with people who apparently have hundreds or even thousands of games. And again, if anyone wants to cheat in solo player, fair enough. But these YouTube videos are clearly vying for attention and glory, and they're clearly presenting these streaks as real. And this isn't even a full list of YouTube Battle Tower games that I strongly suspect are cheated. These are just the ones where I think the explanation can be easily understood by a layman. Maybe this video gave you a bit more appreciation for the thinking required at top level tower. If you enjoyed that, please check out my YouTube shorts. And if you enjoyed the cheater breakdown, I recommend checking out this video where I go over potentially cheated old factory records from Smogon. Until next time.